All right, guys, it's Tuesday. It got rained out today. The skid steer is still in the shop. I talked to the guys at Flint. They've got the old final drive taken out, and it's ready for the new final drive, but the problem is they're having trouble tracking down a new final drive at the moment. So the parts guy is scouring heaven and earth right now trying to find me a final drive. You would think that would be something that would be pretty readily available for a John Deere skid steer, but apparently they had some in stock, and then they went to check again, and then they were gone and somebody got them. I don't know, so they're looking. So, but the old one's out. Apparently what had happened is there was a seal, I guess, on the back side of the final drive in there in that hub, and it just had a very, very small, I mean, I never even noticed it, very, very small leak, I guess, to the point where the last time the oil was changed out in that, like, I want to say like a year and a half ago at the 2,000 hour mark, and that oil is supposed to be changed every 1,000 hours. So I took that machine in for a 2,000 hour service deal to Flint, and they didn't even catch it back then. I think that was about a year and a half ago, and they changed the oil in that drive. So a year and a half later, it took like a year and a half for that oil to come out, and it finally just basically ran dry, and those gears in there just burn up, and that's what happened, unfortunately. So nobody even, it was such a slow, small, minuscule hydraulic leak that nobody even noticed it. Not the guys at Deere when they changed the oil a year and a half ago, or myself, because I keep that undercarriage pretty clean after I'm in a lot of these muddy environments, and stuff just happens. So unfortunately. So one other thing, a little announcement. I will be at the Utility Expo at the YouTube meet and greet. I'm not on the official list. I saw Dirt Perfect's thing about that and reached out to him. And I was like, hey man, I'd love to be there. I'd love to come. You know, would that be okay? And he was like, yeah man, come on. He's like, I think we've got the official list, but just come on anyway. We'd love to have you. And I thought that was really awesome. So I really appreciate Mike over at Dirt Perfect, you know, being cool about that and everything, and inviting me. And like I said, I'm not like on the official Hyundai list, but they told me I was welcome to come and crash the thing. So I'm gonna crash it, I guess. So that'll be fun. I get to meet a lot of these guys. I've never met any of them, so that's been really cool. And super excited about that. So if you guys are gonna be around at the Utility Expo, I will be, myself and Misty will be walking around. We will be at the meet, the Hyundai YouTuber meet and greet. So if you can make it, I'll be there. Please say hello and check it. You know, there's tons of other guys that are way bigger than I am on this whole YouTube thing. So, you know, come by. I'm sure it's going to be a great time. I'm sure there's going to be tons of people there. Lots of cool equipment to look at and stuff like that. I will also be at the GIE Expo 3 weeks later back in Louisville. I am super excited about that. I've never been to that expo. I really, really am just like so stoked. There just seems to be so much cool stuff there. I hope to see some more YouTubers and other people there. So I'm really excited about that one. I don't think Misty's coming to that one. I think that's just going to be me flying solo, walking around that thing, which is kind of cool because that's more my deal than it is hers. So I can get to nerd out and not bother her with all that nonsense. So, but if you guys are going to be at the GIE, I'm sure you guys will see me walking around. You know, hit me up on Instagram or whatever. I'll be all over the place. I'm sure I'll be filming stuff. So, but today, since I'm rained out, I get a lot of questions about this equipment. I got this thing in the shop, so I just kind of want to go over some stuff with it, my thoughts on some things, answer some of you guys' questions on some stuff, give you guys some more information on this particular machine and that mulcher. So let's get into it. One question that I get a lot, what's the deal with all the fans and stuff in here? My dad has had a fire and water restoration business for like 20 years now, and I kind of did some of that late high school, early college years. I did all that for about 8 or so years before I joined the Army. So I did all that, and so he's still got a bunch of this equipment back here. So he still does some of that part-time still. He's kind of semi-retired, but I get a lot of questions when I'm filming stuff back here, like, what's with all the fans in there? I'm like, that's my dad's stuff. He just lets me kind of park this thing back up in here when it's over here at our office. So anyway, so if you guys don't know, this is a Kubota U55-4, and this is a 2014 model. I bought this right at just about a year ago, and it had exactly 1,080 hours on it, I believe. And I think it's got 1,500 and some change on it now, 1 year later. So I've been using it a pretty good bit. And I got this mulcher earlier this year from Richardson Service over in Conway. This is a Prinoth. This is the M450E-900. And this mulcher is rated for machines from 5 to 10 or 12 tons, I forget. But it's like, it goes from a whole range. It's a pretty good range. And then they have, I think, several other mulchers for bigger machines. And they're, obviously bigger. So, one thing that I had a question about this. A lot of the mulchers that go on these mini excavators have piston hydraulic motors. And the piston hydraulic motor is the same type of motor that you'll see on the MTL. And most of your piston motors are for high flow applications. And actually with these mulchers, this one is not a piston motor. But when you get up to the larger sizes for the Prinoths, they switch them over to piston motors. But the Dennis Seamoff, the FAE, the Fecon, those three I know, the big three, they run piston motors. And I think the motor is up here on the top here. Mine, the motor is right here. And so these lines come down. There's just an in and an out. This is your in, that's your out. Oil comes down through here, goes through a line under here, goes into a motor in here, and then that motor turns the drum. And then there's a bearing around on both ends of this drum. There's a bearing here and a bearing over here, and that's what these little grease zerks right here, one, and there's another one over there to keep that bearing greased. So with the piston motors, you have to have a third case drain line. And when you guys see, like on the MTL, I'm always, on the skid steer, I'm always hooking up 3 lines instead of 2. The reason for that is the piston motors require a case drain, what's called a case drain line, or a return to tank line. And what that is, when that motor builds up pressure inside the motor, it has to have a way to return oil that's under pressure back to the tank. Basically, it's like a pressure relief system is what it is, so you don't blow out the seals in the piston motor. This has a direct drive motor in it that does not need that. And one thing that I really like about these direct drive motors is they're extremely fast when it comes to getting you back to full RPM when you're mulching. I mean, this thing recovers like extremely quickly. They're very efficient motors, and it's really, really good, efficient use of the oil when it comes to keeping this drum going, and also recovery time. So, and a lot of these machines don't come with a third line hookup that's already routed back to the hydraulic tank on that side of the machine. So typically when you buy and you have like a Kubota or a Deere or whatever, especially some of the older machines, they don't come with that third line. So either the dealer that you're buying it from, when they hook it up, or you're going to have to take it to a hydraulic shop, they're going to have to run you a third line back to the tank to run that piston motor. A lot of the skid steers with high flow applications already have that set up on them. You'll see that third little, it's typically like a 1/2 inch or like a 3/8 inch little flat face coupler. It's very small. That's typically your case drain line, but most of these mini excavators don't come with that. I think maybe some of the newer cats do, but a lot of these mini excavators, especially some of the older models, and this is like I said, this is a 2014, don't come with it. I don't even think even the newer Kubotas, I don't know if even they even come with it. I don't quote me on that. I know the Deeres don't. So that is one thing I like about this particular machine, was that it was relatively simple for the dealer to take this, you know, for me to bring this machine over there, them to hook it up, and basically tune that motor to the flow rate of this machine. Very easy, very simple. They dynoed this thing out. I don't know about pressures and everything. I do know this machine, the auxiliary flow, puts out exactly 20 gallons a minute. I think it's like 19.8 or 19.9. So it's like dead on 20 gallons a minute. And we're running 47 point something horsepower with this machine. And so they dynoed this thing at dead on 2,000 RPM. Now, when you're buying one of these things, they come with 3 different motor options, motor sizes, depending on the size machine that you have and the flow rate you have. I think mine is the middle one, and if I remember correctly, I think it's a 39cc motor, 29 or 39, I forget. But it's the middle one, so they have 3 different motor sizes for this one. If you go down a little to the smaller one, somebody messaged me left me a comment on YouTube on one of the videos and said they had the same head with the little bit smaller motor on a Kubota, and they were getting 2,800 RPM. But you're going to sacrifice with a smaller motor. You're going to get more speed, but you're going to sacrifice some torque. So that higher speed might be better in lighter vegetation, lighter, stringier vegetation and grass and stuff like that, where you need higher speeds to kind of cut through that stuff. And then your slower speeds and more torque is going to be if you're kind of cutting more heavier vegetation. I think that this thing runs perfect where it is. I think it has the perfect balance of speed and torque for my application. And a lot of times this thing has so much power that a lot of times, unless I'm cutting like really big stuff, I only run the throttle at about 80%, 80-85%. And so that thing's probably spinning at maybe, I would have to guess, somewhere around the 1,800 RPM range, and it does really, really good in that. And it's a lot more efficient on the fuel and the economy. One other thing that people ask me about, when you guys see it in the video, when this thing is like, when I'm lifting up the boom and moving the arm and articulating the head, if I'm doing all 3 of those functions, lifting this boom, moving this arm, and, you know, moving that head back and forth, you know, or up and down, that's taking a lot of flow to put into all these cylinders. So you got 1, 2, and 3 cylinders that all needing oil, plus the oil trying to go into the motor to spin this thing. So it does slow this thing down a little bit when you're doing moving all of that stuff together. But typically when you're doing all that, you're not cutting anything. So typically once you raise it up and get it up to the tree, you just swing it over and then you're just dropping it, and you're not using that much oil. And even when you are, you know, raising it up and doing all that stuff, you'll hear that thing kind of slow down. It recovers instantly. I mean, it's very, very quick. So some people are saying, I don't know if it's got enough power or enough flow to run that head. It has plenty. But when you're doing all of that at the same time, it is going to take some oil flow away from the head. But the way this motor is you know, done up, it's so efficient that it recovers extremely quickly, and you don't even hardly notice it. So I don't have any problems being really efficient with that, and having problems with the oil flow when I'm moving all this stuff and keeping that head spinning. What you will find, I get a lot of people saying, why don't you just drive forward and let the head run? Well, these drive hubs down here take priority for the oil flow. So if you guys think that head slows down a lot when you're moving the boom and the arm and everything, it really slows down when you track forward. And you guys can hear that in the video. You'll track forward and you'll hear it slow down, and then as soon as I stop, you'll hear it spin back up, like, and it spins right back up. But it really, really does slow down when you're tracking forward or back. So it's not impossible to cut when you're tracking forward with this thing or backwards, but it really, really takes away a lot of the flow. And it also takes away so much flow that if you're trying to cut and drive forward, let's say you're over the side and you're driving forward and the thing's cutting as you go along, you don't have enough oil flow because there's only so much oil to go around and the pump can only pump so much. You're running this head, so that's like 50% of your oil flow. The other 50% is going to your drives. You have no remaining like pump flow, you know, to move and make adjustments with your other cylinders. So once you start tracking forward that thing, it's basically in a fixed position until you stop driving forward. So you can't make any type of adjustments to height or angle or anything like that as you're driving forward. It's not like a side cutter on a tractor where you can drive forward and then make all those little adjustments as the ground changes, like with a side cutter on a tractor. You cannot do that with this. You can't do that with really any excavator unless it has, like the larger machines where they have the external power packs, which you'll see that on some of the larger excavators, full size, you know, your 200 and 300 class machines, where they have this big power pack on the back. And I know Fecon makes one. Basically what that is, it's a retrofitted additional it's like a second engine and a second hydraulic pump. So what happens is the machine and its oil flow is turning, you know, the tracks and operating the boom and arm and everything. And then that secondary engine and pump is just running the mulcher or whatever attachment. It's typically a mulcher. So that way you might be able to track forward and cut, but it doesn't really matter. From what I've been told from the guys at Richardson Service, it doesn't matter what size machine that you've got. You can't really, you know, unless you've got that secondary power pack on the back, you can't really track any of these machines forward and cut. It just takes too much flow, really. I mean, you can, but it's not very effective typically. So that's one question I get a lot. Why don't you just drive forward? Can't do it. One other thing is I'm going to kind of rag on Deere here for a minute. Well, Deere / Hitachi. I really wanted a John Deere when I was looking for a mini excavator. I really wanted the 60G. Great machine. Has super reliable Yanmar engine in it. Powerful. It's like 53 horsepower. Auxiliary flow puts out 24 gallons a minute. And you've got a good bit of horsepower behind that. It's a well-built machine. It's solid. Everything about it is heavy duty. It's stout. That machine will actually lift more from the boom. It'll lift more. This one has a little bit more digging breakout force at the bucket. I think the Deere's are like 9,000 and some change. This one's like 11.1 or 11.2. But the 60 will lift more. It's a little bit heavier machine depending on the options that you get, like with the 4-way and the extra counterweight on the back or a long arm. They've got some different options of how you can want to set it up. But the thing that I didn't like about that, and I'm going to turn this thing on. Let's see where the key. Okay, I got the key. I'm going to show you guys this really quick. So, sorry, this thing's a mess. So, when you get in this thing and you turn it on, I can go over here and I can select, I got to put the lever down. I'm not going to crank it up, but I can select presets. So there's the auxiliary preset for my thumb. There's the mulcher. That's for a hammer. I don't really use any other ones. It's just 1 and 2 basically. So thumb and mulcher. So, and then I can go into the menu here and I can set, so for like my thumb, let's talk about that. So for the thumb, I can actually set the hydraulic flow, like for it going down and then coming back up. I can tell the machine in this computer how much flow I want it to have in the cylinder for it going down and then going back up. And you can control all that in here. If I want, you know, a whole lot of force coming down, you know, so I can turn the flow way up for it to come down and then have it really low for it going back up. So there's a lot of relief pressure there. you know, I can do all that. Same thing with the mulcher. I can change how much flow that the auxiliary puts into the motor in here, in this little dash. And a lot of the machines, you can do that with you know, in these monitors. I know you can do that in the Cats. You can do it in the Kubotas. You can do it in several of the machines. The John Deere does not have that. You don't get that option in these consoles, like in the little computer here, until you get up into like the full size, like 130, I think, and on up size machines. And so if you guys saw in that previous video when I was over there at Flint and they had that 85G with that VMC brush cutter, I was talking to the shop manager about that, and I was saying, you know, I was telling him, hey, I can set my presets in that console right there, and I can, you know, basically tell the computer how much flow I want to go to my thumb or my mulcher or whatever it is I'm running. And, you know, I can do all that from the little control thing in there from the computer. You can't do that on a Deere. So for them to hook up that VMC, for them to have two different flow rates for the thumb and for that cutter, they had to do a whole bunch of hydraulic magic to that thing and set up some stuff. And I didn't even understand it, like, because I don't even know what they were trying to do, but they made it work. But it was like a whole rigmarole for them in the shop to have to do all this workarounds with the hydraulics and everything, because they don't have any kind of way to set those presets. And so if I were to go, if I had a 60G and I want to go over there and run this mulcher, there would have been a whole bunch of rigmarole, you know, probably to try to set up the pressures and the lines and the flow rates and all that weird stuff to make this thing work. And so with these newer machines, you don't have that problem. And this, you know, and that's not all, like, you know, like a brand new, like 2021 John Deere 60G does not have that option. And the John Deere excavators, all of them, are all basically Hitachis. So John Deere / Hitachi 2021, you go into that dash right there, you don't have that option to set up anything. But this is a 2014 Kubota, 7 years old now. And, you know, even back in 2014, Kubota had, you know, the technology to you know, in these computer dashes in the console, to be able to set that up to you know, set your presets for that. And so John Deere, in my mind, John Deere / Hitachi is way behind the curve in the technology for some of the bells and whistles that a lot of other manufacturers like Kubota and Cat and some of these other Hyundai are putting on these machines. So if anybody from Deere / Hitachi is watching this, you guys need to get, you know, on the ball about giving your owner-operators some more versatility with running attachments on your machines, in my mind. And this machine, the Kubotas don't have like every little bell and whistle on them. You know, if you want a machine that's got every bell and whistle on it that'll do all kinds of stuff, the Cat is probably the most advanced. I mean, they have the new stick steer thing now where you can basically drive the machine without having to touch these levers. You can, you know, you can put it in stick steer mode where you can drive the machine with the control arms. I mean, it's just, those things have all kinds of bells and whistles and stuff that you can do with them. You know, whether you like Cat or not, that's just the way it is. So that's why I went. That's one of the main reasons I went with this Kubota, because I knew I could set up my flow rates in that in there. I'd done enough research to know that I could do that and set this thing up. And the other thing is, a lot of the John Deere, especially the older ones, like I said, this was a 2014. It already came with this diverter block, and so all I had to do was just hook this thing right on up. This was all already here. I did have to change these quick connect heads, but all this was already here, ready to go. So this thing was basically plug and play for the most part for this mulcher. The John Deere's until very recent, I think it was like 2020, either 2019 or 2020, they finally started coming out with these diverter blocks. But any of the older machines, 2014, 15, 16, you do not see this on here. The lines for the thumb go all the way up and they connect all the way up here. So a lot of the guys running attachments on the John Deere's and they have a thumb, they have to chain down this thumb and then run their line all the way up here. And then you've got your lines for your thumb just kind of hanging, dangling there, or you've got to unhook them or what. I mean, it's just the whole thing was just kind of a mess with some of the older John Deeres and running attachments. Did not like it at all. So they're now finally starting to put these diverter blocks on there, but they still don't have any way for you to control the oil flow rate to an attachment in the computer. So a little bit of a rant there, but that was one of the main reasons why. So if you're trying to run an attachment on one of the John Deeres, they don't have that. I mean, the John Deeres don't really have a whole lot of bells and whistles on them at all. I mean, you know, if you're trying to run an attachment and do all kinds of crazy stuff with them, they're just not built for that. But if you're just like digging, like you can get a 4-way blade on them, you know, if you're doing trenching work. But if you're just digging and using the thumb and the blade, they are great machines. But once you start trying to, you know, hook attachments and do other things with them, they're not quite made for that just yet. But hopefully they'll get there. But that's not to say they aren't great machines. I really, really, really do like the Deeres. They're very well built, super reliable. They're just very simple. And sometimes that's a good thing. In this particular application, for what I do, it's not. So one question I get a lot, either on YouTube or Instagram, what do I charge, or what did a particular project cost? And I don't talk about my pricing really at all. Two reasons. One, what I'm charging for a particular job is really between, in my mind, that's between me and my client, and that's between me and that person, and that's all there, that's who's involved. So I don't really talk about what I charge for particular jobs. Now, what I charge for the equipment, I don't really talk about that too much, because what I'm charging in my area may not be what you can or should charge where you are, depending on what kind of equipment you're running, what your application is, what kind of material, what do you need? Do you need a mulcher? Do you need a brush cutter? What size machine do you need? What size machine can you haul? What are your fuel costs? What are taxes? What kind of licensing do you need? What kind of insurance requirements do you need? Like for me, for some of the stuff that I do, I have to have workman's comp. I can't just have liability, so I have workman's comp. So that's an additional expense that I have to take into consideration. So you've got to look at your market and look at a whole bunch of different things and see not only what should you charge, but what can you charge? What can the market bear for you to charge? Where I'm at, a lot of people here don't have a lot of disposable income. We live in an area that just doesn't have people that just have a lot of disposable income. I price a lot of jobs where I go out, I give people a good price on something, a good fair price, and they just say, listen, I don't have the money for that right now. And I'm not charging anything outside the market, they just don't have the disposable income to pay for it right now. But if you're in a market somewhere where people have more disposable income to pay for projects like this, to have a gravel driveway installed or their backyard mulched out or something like that, you typically can get more jobs, and sometimes you can actually charge more. And then sometimes you charging more, like I said, might depend on the cost of fuel. What type of equipment are you hauling around? What size truck do you need? What size trailer? Are you brush cutting? Are you mulching? It's a whole bunch of different questions there that you kind of have to look at your market, your application. What are your customers looking for? What do they need done? And what do you need to cost to invest to make that, to meet that demand? And so there's a lot of questions to be asked there. Are you buying new? Are you buying used? What equipment do you already have? Do you already have a truck and trailer to pull this stuff around? Do you not have the truck and trailer? So many things. Do you need a rental space to store your equipment? Or do you already have a place? Can you keep it at your home? Or do you live in a subdivision where they're not gonna let you park a truck and trailer and have a piece of heavy equipment in there? There's so many different factors. So for what I do and what I charge, may be completely different from where you're at. So my best thing for you is don't ask me what I charge. Call some of the people that are in your area or near your area and say, hey, what are you charging? If I need this done, what's the rate to have X done or Y done? And see what those costs are. And you're probably going to get a range. And it could be pretty big. And you're going to have to kind of see with what you're doing, what your cost should be in that market. Do you want to go a little lower and make a little less, but maybe try to pick up more jobs? Or do you need to be higher and you can, maybe be a little more selective with your jobs, maybe work a little less, but maybe make a little bit more per job? There's a bunch of questions to be answered there. You just kind of have to figure it out, be flexible, throw things against the wall, and just kind of see what works for you in your particular market, and see again what the demands are in your market. Do you need a mulcher, or can you get by with a brush cutter, or will a brush cutter not be big enough? What are you needing to do, and what kind of equipment do you need to get the job done? So a lot of different questions to answer there. So that's why I don't really talk about it that much, because you guys, I might say, well, I'm charging this amount, and you go out and charge that much for something, and you go out of business because what I was charging maybe wasn't enough, for you to sustain your business, or you charge what I'm charging, and your market can't handle that price, and so you get no work because people there have even less disposable income than where I'm at, and you get no work. So. And then you go out of business. So you really have to look at your market and look at a bunch of different factors and just try to, I figured this out on my own. I just kind of, if I can figure it out, and I'm an idiot, if I can figure it out, you guys can. I don't mind helping you guys out, answering any questions that you got, but that's my best advice for you when it comes to pricing. So get a lot of those questions, and I'll be helping you to try to guide anybody, that I can, but, it takes a little bit of time and some research and, and some effort to kind of get there. So, all right, let's talk about this mulcher a little bit more. All right, got the mulcher up off the ground here and want to take a little bit closer look at a couple things on this thing. Like I said, the motor is back here, and overall, I love this mulcher. And if I had to do it all over again, I would definitely buy this mulcher. It's wider. The cutting width is wider than the Dennis C-Moth. I don't know this for a fact, but I think these teeth are probably getting more life than what a lot of people are getting out of the ones on the Fecon. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that to be the case. One thing where this thing, in my mind, does struggle, well, I don't want to say it struggles, but I don't like the carbide design that Prinoth has for this mulcher. You can put carbides. You don't have to run these chisel style teeth. You can run carbides, but I don't particularly like the design of them, and I don't know. I haven't used them, but they just seem like I don't think they work all that great. Not compared to, I think, the FAE. If you're in an environment where you need to run carbides and you're looking for either a mulcher for a skid steer or a mini excavator, my advice would be to heavily look at the FAE. FAE has, in my mind, the best technology when it comes to innovating teeth designs, carbide teeth designs. They just have a wide range of different tooth options in carbide for all different types of applications. I really like their innovation in that. I don't think I'll ever run carbides on this. It doesn't work in my application. We have a lot of sandy soil here, and we have a lot of hard, stringy vegetation like live oaks and water oaks and red maples and stuff like that, where you need a really sharp tooth to cut through that hardwood vegetation. And they're just much more efficient. And we don't have any rocks here. I'm near the beach. We don't, the only rock you'll ever find is if somebody's dumped some concrete, or you're working around like, a retention pond or something like that, and there's riprap. Outside of that, we don't really have any natural rock here on the surface of the ground. Anything you'll find has been brought in from somewhere else or dumped. So, if I had to get something with carbide, if I was in that area, I probably would be heavily looking at the FAE head. The FAE head is a really good head. It's lighter. One thing about that head, where this one weighs dead on at 1,000 pounds with this mount on it, I think the FAE is like 750 pounds and some change, 750, 800 pounds. So it's definitely lighter, and 200 pounds out on the end of this arm is a huge difference on these smaller machines. If you're in like a 300 size excavator, 200 pounds ain't nothing, but on one of these, 200 pounds can make a huge difference with the weight and the balance and stuff like that. So everything, I really like the design of this head. I like that the motor is back here. It's nice and protected. There's not really any way to kind of smash this, thing into anything really. If the motor was up here or up on this end, I'd be worried about it, when you stick the arm out, it banging into something. Or up here, like on the Fecon one, the motor is up here. I'd be worried about something falling down and smashing it. But on this one, the motor is back here and it's nice and well protected. This is some pretty thick steel. I mean, it's pretty hard. I've hit some stuff with them, and they've just, there's no dents. I mean, it's pretty thick stuff, pretty tough. Like this one doesn't have a dent in it. So it's not the thickest steel, but I think it's thick enough. You puncture that, what are you doing? But it can definitely take a hit and still protect that bearing in there. And there's a good bit of space between this cover and the bearing. The bearing is like right there, the seal, the face of it. So you've got some space in there too. So even if something hits this and dents it or whatever, it's not riding right up against the bearing. Same thing right here. This cover's not riding right up next against the motor. So if this does get hit or dented or whatever, there's some space between this cover and the actual motor and the lines right there. The only real pet peeve that I have on this mulcher, something that I don't like, there's one thing that I found that I don't like, and I think this is it. This is like the only thing I found that I don't like. And you can actually probably see this in my videos, are these carbide teeth right here. What happens here, well, I take that back. These carbides really aren't probably the problem. It's really, and this is a good example right here. See this space right here? There's a lot of space between this tooth and this and the edge of the inside of the mulcher housing right here. So what happens is, a lot of times, because this space is so large, you'll get something, you'll run a piece of material, mulcher will grab something and run it up in here, especially a lot of times when you're back dragging and you're processing that material down. It'll grab something just a little bit too big on this edge and it'll get caught right in here. It'll try to come through and it'll get caught on that wear plate right there. I'll get my light out, I'll show you. Get my light. You guys can see that wear plate right there. That ridge, that's this thing right here. And those ridges in there, that's the wear plate. And those ridges kind of help as that material passes through when you're back dragging and it's passing through the inside of the drum. Those ridges kind of help process the material and break it up and mulch it down. But what happens is if you get a piece just right, it'll get jammed right along this edge here. And this carbide tooth is really bad about, and you can kind of see it right there where it's taking some wear there on the edge. Something will get stuck there and it'll spin, and it'll actually smoke. If it's a piece of dry material, it'll actually smoke. It'll get so much friction because that carbide tooth right there will rub on it, and a piece of wood stuck right here, and that carbide tooth just going around and it's rubbing on it, and there's nothing here to catch that piece of material and force it out. So it gets stuck right here, and then these teeth, this carbide here just wears and wears and wears on it, and it's kind of, sometimes it can be a pain to get out. or it'll actually get hot, and these teeth will get really super hot. This housing right here can get hot. So you got to kind of keep an eye out for that. I've had stuff get caught in there and I not see it or hear it, and all of a sudden you got smoke coming out of this thing and you're like, holy crap. But that's the only real thing that I found that that's been a little bit of an issue. I wish there was something here that would kind of run a little closer to the edge of this drum here that would kind of force material out. That would kind of help that. So not a huge deal, but a small pet peeve. So about the teeth, I really like this tooth design. It's a very deep tooth. You can see here there's a lot. This is all usable tooth right here, all the way back to this line right here. This is a completely usable tooth. And there's a lot of tooth there to use. And I'll get the tape measure out. We'll measure it real quick. What is it? Let's see what we got here. That's about an inch, a little over an inch and a half of usable tooth right there. So you've got a lot of wear, you know, a lot of life in these teeth because there's just so much material there to wear down. So I've got well over 100 hours on these teeth. I'd say I've got close to somewhere between, I haven't tracked it, but I'd say it's somewhere between 120 and 150. And I've hit some rock and I hit some riprap on that retention pond job. You can see some of them are a little chipped and worn on the edges there. That one was kind of bad. There was one that was really bad. Yeah, there you go. Let's see. Yeah, that one. So I took the grinder and just tried to clean them up as best I can. I'm trying to get as much life out of these teeth as possible before I have to change them. They're $27.50 a piece, and doing all 20 of them is about 650 bucks. You don't have to change the bolts though. The bolts are reusable as long as the threads are good and they're still holding and they're not damaged. One other minor thing, it's not a huge deal, but it's just the way these heads with these rings. So these rings are your bite limiters, and this works just like a chainsaw. So think about a chainsaw, if you're familiar with it. Here's the cutting tooth, and then here's your raker gauge. But you don't, like on a chainsaw where you'd have to grind your raker down, you don't grind the raker down, you just keep sharpening the tooth. Because we're on a chainsaw where the cutter kind of goes back in an angle like that, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, like going down an angle. These teeth across here are flat. So they keep the same cutting height all the way across the top of the tooth. And then you sharpen them from the underside, which, just the way these teeth are designed, is it's a bit of a pain. And I'll show you why. This tooth is optimized at 35.5 degrees. So this angle here is 35.5 degrees. And they give you this cool little key. It's on my keychain. And you can put this little guide on there. And as you sharpen the teeth, it helps you keep, it helps you keep your angle. Like that. You guys can, there we go. So that, and then you also can do it like this as well. You can take this and set this like this, and you put it up to that edge like that, and you can see how that's flat right there. And so this little cool little key kind of helps you with keeping this angle as you sharpen these teeth. The problem is, I got my grinder here, I'm not going to turn it on, but it's hard sometimes to get this grinder head underneath here to get at these teeth. And then also because you're up here, I'm on the top, I can't see what the grinder's doing on the bottom. So it's hard to kind of keep the grinder at the angle that you need it to, unless you're like all the way down, like basically parallel with the tooth as you're trying to grind it. And that's kind of a pain to kind of like sit here and be all the way to the side. And that's just the way these teeth are. They're right now, most of these teeth are way off this 35.5 degree angle. I'll kind of show you here. I'll find one that's actually halfway deep. There we go. That one's decent on the top. So you can see they're nowhere even close. But I have noticed that 35.5 degree angle is an optimization. That basically means this cutter is the most effective when it's at 35.5 degree on that angle. But as long as this edge right here is sharp, as long as that edge has got, you can hear that. I mean, that thing's like a razor. As long as that's pretty sharp and this is laid back pretty good up underneath here at a decent angle, this tooth is gonna cut. It's gonna cut all day, every day. I haven't seen any real big loss of efficiency or productivity with that angle being, you know, 5 to 8 degrees off right there. As long as that edge is nice and razor and sharp, you're good. You're pretty much good, as long as it's pretty close. But I guess in their computer optimizations and their testing and everything, that 35.5 is basically the best angle to give you the best productivity, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But it's just kind of hard. It's also kind of hard sometimes, like this is a good example with this tooth. Like when you come across here and you're trying to get in, sometimes in some of those angles, this raker gauge, like, you know, sometimes they kind of get in your way to try to get in there. It gets a little tight trying to get into some of those teeth. Like right there. Like this is that's probably the worst one. So what happens is the head down here is hitting this tooth right there, and I can't get all the way back in there and to get into that tooth right there because this one, now if this one was down a little further, like instead of being there, it was right there, that wouldn't be a problem. So sometimes on some of these teeth, the way they're situated in here, they can be a bit of a pain to kind of get to those to sharpen, but it's not a huge deal. You know, some of the teeth, like the dentist Seamoth teeth, they sharpen from the top. These just happen to work from the bottom, but it is what it is, you know, just the way they go. But I'm really super happy with the life of these teeth. I don't know what they're made out of or how, or maybe it's just the environment I'm cutting in, or maybe it's just because this head doesn't spend a lot of time on the ground like one on a skid steer does, but these teeth are lasting. They have way exceeded my expectations. I thought I'd be lucky to get 100 hours. When I first got this thing, I was like, if I get 100 hours out of these teeth, I'm gonna be super happy. I'm at somewhere between 120 and 150, and I still got good usable life out of them. We're good. We're good. So just something to think about with these teeth. If you're wanting a head that's going to run carbides, I don't think that this is maybe the best head for a carbide tooth. If you're in that application, I would definitely strongly look at FAE. But if you're running chisel teeth, dude, this baby right here, I'll vouch for it all day long and twice on Sunday. At least until I find a serious problem with it or I have something bad happen to it. But they assured me, as long as you grease this thing and keep it maintained and don't let those teeth wear past that line, just make sure you replace them and you don't wear on the mount itself, and you keep these bearings right here nice and greased, and you change out these wear plates when they wear out, because they will eventually, this thing, you shouldn't have a problem with this thing. So super happy with this thing. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying this Kubota as well. The only thing that I really don't like about this Kubota that I found is this thumb, and the fact that every time you lift up this safety bar right here, it turns off the auxiliary and the 2-speed. So like if you're mulching or whatever and you got the mulcher turned on right there on the control, so I've got the mulcher selected, I'm mulching, and then I get out to maybe like move the camera and I lift this up, it turns the auxiliary off. So then when I get back in, I have to turn it back, I have to reselect it on the little button right there. So, bit of a pain. One thing about the Takeuchi doesn't do that. Yeah, overall, really like this machine. I don't really use the thumb a whole lot, so I haven't really put much. I thought about maybe doing something different with that, but sorry about that. battery died on me. Went from 4% to 0% before I knew what was going on. But as I was saying, the only thing I really don't like about this Kubota is really this thumb. And when I first got it, I thought about maybe kind of retrofitting another tine on both sides to this thumb, having a welder do that for me. But I don't use this thumb a whole lot. I'm mostly mulching or brush cutting with this machine, so it really hasn't been a big ordeal. If I was doing more clearing or tree work or something like that, and the thumb was more vital, I would probably do something a little different with that. And the only reason I haven't done it is because I mulch so much with this thing, and this thing is so heavy out on the end of this machine when you've got it all the way out, especially over the side, that any additional weight that I add to this thumb is just going to make the machine itself more unstable, and it's just not worth it for right now. Maybe sometime down the road I might do something different with it, but overall there's not much to complain about with this Kubota. I've been super happy with it. It's been reliable, plenty of power to run this head or any other attachment. Cab's fairly comfortable. Not in love with the ergonomics of these controls, but I think in the new Dash 5 they've done a little better. They've got the new U55 instead of Dash 4. They got the new Dash 5s out now. Whole new control screen. I think it's like an LCD screen up there in the cab, and I think the ergonomics are a little better with the controls. I think they've done some better stuff with the air conditioning and heating vents and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see what kind of improvements. I haven't had a chance to run one of those, but I'm really excited to kind of see exactly what the improvements are in the new Dash 5. But overall, for what this machine is and does, I really like it. And yeah, been very happy with it, very pleased. So, but if you guys got any other questions or something I didn't cover, please just let me know. I'll try to answer any questions that you guys have. I really appreciate everybody watching the channel. So that's it for today, guys. I tried to cover some of the stuff that you guys have been asking me about with this machine and this mulcher, and you know, just trying to give you guys a little bit of review on some stuff, give you some more information, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Kind of got rained out, like I said, and the skid steer's in the shop, so I'm taking Friday off, going up to Raleigh or up to Apex to see some family. My brother is coming into town from Atlanta, so Misty and I are going to spend the weekend up there. And then next week is the Utility Expo, so I hope you guys can make it. Like I said, I'll be there walking around for Thursday and Friday, so I hope to see you guys there. Should be a great time. Come and see all the other YouTubers there. They're way bigger and more cooler than me. So, but yeah, hope I was able to answer some of you guys' questions and give you some more information on this machine and some of the other machines out there on the market, pricing and doing this kind of work, and then also this mulcher. I'm really the only guy out there on YouTube space today running this mulcher on a mini excavator. There's some other guys running, I think, some Prinoths on some skid steers, but I'm really the only guy out there making videos with really this mulcher on a mini excavator, and really this setup in general with a Kubota and a Prinoth. So that's been kind of cool to be the first to kind of do that, and I'm really, you know, that's kind of cool. So, and I really appreciate everybody, you know, nicknaming this thing Munchy. It's so applicable, it's so cool. And so another thing somebody asked me about is apparel. I've got something in the works for apparel, guys. Misty and I are working on that right now. It'll probably be the end of the year. Got a lot of other stuff going on, but I've got a logo, I've got a company that I'm doing separately with the merchandise stuff. I've got some really cool ideas for some shirts and stuff. We're gonna have some fun with it, and so just stay tuned for that. I've got something coming, hopefully later this year, early next year. You guys are gonna start seeing some really cool merchandise with some shirts and some hats and stuff, so stay tuned for that. So I appreciate everybody watching the channel, all the support you guys have given me. This channel has grown so much bigger than what I ever thought it would ever be, and it's just been so cool to go on that journey with you guys and show you guys what I do, and take you along for some of my adventures and my jobs and and life, and bring you guys along for the ride. And I truly appreciate everybody that watches and supports the channel, and for all the questions and comments, all the funny comments a lot of you guys drop and stuff like that. And thank you to a lot of the other YouTubers out there, like Chris over at Let's Dig 18, Mike over at Dirt Perfect, Brandon over at Elite Earthworks, a lot of the guys that help pave the way to doing this stuff on YouTube, to showing that, you know, this is something that people wanted to watch, and that's been really cool. So thank you to those guys too for trailblazing it for guys like me to do this as well. So that's it for today. I will catch you guys later. I'm out. I will see you guys at Utility Expo. Bye, everybody.